In this video, we're going to see how I went from this insert holding all the original content you see here to this, a new insert that holds all the same components but with 3 additional Dixit expansions. Isn't that nice? As usual, I'll be going over the pain points identified with the original insert and then move on to talking about the design itself. So looking at the original insert, quite spacious. It has more space than it needs that they could afford to separate individual components into their own dedicated slots, like you see with the markers and the player tokens. When I removed the insert from the box to do test fits, I noticed there is so much room to store more things. People have already come up with ideas to store multiple decks for their copies of Dixit, but unlike Dixit, STELLA has more components to deal with. It's got a scoreboard, though Dixit's is larger. There's a deck of word cards to account for. You've got player boards, markers, cleaning cloths, and more. So what did I do differently to allow the extra Dixit cards? Well, like I mentioned before, the leisurely use of space in this insert meant there was room to condense things. The markers didn't require that much space, the tokens didn't need their own individual slots. With this design, I'd say this was one of the easier challenges to overcome with fitting everything into place. I was looking to see if we could squeeze a total of 5 decks into this. It may have been possible, but cramming the small components into a single area went against why I'm in this hobby to begin with. I still want components to have its own defined space and be easy to reach and put away. So as you can see, I've already got 3 decks in here, and there's one more space over here for a 4th deck. The deck slots themselves are sized up so you can fit thin sleeves, aka penny sleeves. So I'm thinking brands like Mayday or Sleeve Kings. I haven't tested thick sleeves. I estimate it may be possible after you remove the air from the sleeves after flattening them, but I'm not sure. There's about a centimeter gap between the decks, and I've left a hole in the floor of the insert so that it creates a 2mm gap between the deck and the bottom of the box. This makes it easier to get a grip on the underside of the deck to pick it up more effortlessly. Also, I've etched letters into every slot so you can identify which deck goes where. Next are the tokens as denoted by the lettering. All the tokens go into this small niche. While they aren't individually labeled, I would suspect the different shapes of each niche is more than enough for you to figure out which goes where. The player tokens bunch up in a stack and slot in like so. I didn't see a need to separate each token into its own like the original insert did. Now in some way, it's an unnecessary use of space, but I get that STELLA only needed space for 1 deck as opposed to 4. Keeping it together in 1 stack is actually quicker for setup. With the original insert, you can press the player tokens in to lock it into place so it doesn't move around. But for me, not necessary, because so long as there is someone covering the tokens on top, those tokens aren't going anywhere. Also, the sizing of the niche. I've left a certain gap tolerance. As I've iterated many times in other videos, a precise fitment means you need to reinsert these perfectly for it to go in, which equates to more effort that isn't necessary in the context of putting away plastic discs. Being able to land components into their designated spaces easily every time is what is crucial. It's the same dealio with the 4 round markers. Scout token. I went with storing on its side as opposed to standing it up due to space restriction. The token itself isn't symmetric between the top and the bottom half, so when putting this into the insert, there is a specific orientation to put it in, which you can tell if you look at the contours inside the slot. Shouldn't be too hard to figure out. Next, this large space. This is for the markers. But the markers that come with the game are so short, so why do I need all this space? Now something to remember is that these markers will eventually run out of ink, or they'll clog and won't be usable at some point in time. Basically, they need to be replaced. See, in the original insert, the mold is made to fit only a specific shape of a marker. If this marker runs out of ink and you cannot find a replacement of this exact same shape, it's not going to fit into the box anywhere. So by sizing up the space, it accounts for replacement markers that may be larger than the original markers. Here, take a look at these replacements that I have. You can see that they're larger, so they clearly wouldn't fit in the original insert. I do recognize that everyone has access to different brands of markers depending on where you are on the globe, so I went as large as I could with this area. As for the cleaning cloths that do come with the game, I didn't see much value making a dedicated space to house these. If you had to replace these for any reason, you may find yourself having to use differently sized cloths. So again, to simplify the process, just throw them into the same space as the markers. Moving on to the word cards, this design does not accommodate sleeves. The thing is, these cards are not a standard size. They measure a bit short of a standard card size, about 83mm as opposed to 88mm. While you can still slide them into the sleeves, they won't fit nicely. Given that the card's purpose is to contain a word prompt, I don't see much value in sleeving these anyway. Like with the Dixit decks, I sized up the area to get away from the precision fit, as well as the inclusion of the finger slots to pick up the cards more easily. The top of the deck here is just about flush to this surface. This wall here, here, and here are taller because it helps to define the space for the player boards. See, I thought about molding something to match the unique shape of the player boards to make it visually clear where they go in this insert, but this requires you to go through the extra step of orientating the boards correctly before they can return to the box. I opted to avoid doing that in the name of reducing the effort required to put stuff away. So what this basically means is that the defined space I made is simply square shaped, so the board can sit in any orientation you want. But to help with remembering where they go, I've etched in some lettering with an arrow providing direction. And lastly, we come to the big boards. Like the player boards, there is no molding here that provides a visual cue where they go, so I've etched in this space that the boards go up here. Like any game board, I've always put the game boards on top because these are used in every single game, so it's mandatory to set these up first, which makes sense to put them at the top of everything else. And that's it with this one. It's one of the more simpler designs I've worked on, so I've got nothing else left to say about this. If you enjoy watching these full breakdown videos of my work, please consider leaving a like and/or a comment. If you would like to stay up to date with future inserts I make, please consider following me on YouTube or Instagram. And if you wish to purchase a copy of this insert for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. If there's an insert for a game you're looking for that hasn't really been explored in the insert maker world, feel free to leave names in the comments below. Thanks for watching.